Well, another month is over and more books have been read, and I am very excited to tell you about the books I read in April. Hello everyone and happy May. I can't believe that we are in May and that we are closer to, well, now we're fully in spring and we're closer to summer, and I am getting so excited because I love reading seasonally, and I am extremely excited to tell you about the books I read in April and the books I'm currently reading. They will give you a sneak peek of what I'm reading in May, what I will be reading in May. Before I begin, I just want to tell you an hour from when I am uploading this video. So I am uploading this video at 11 a.m. on Friday, May 2nd, and on Friday, May 2nd at 12 p.m. I will be having an Etsy restock. I have a bunch of mini bookmarks that are going to be restocked and a bunch of author portraits that will be restocked. So I just wanted to let you know in case you missed that, because I did talk about it in my last video, but I just wanted to mention it here that an hour from when I upload this video, it is going to be happening. So just to give you a little, the first people that watch this video, a little heads up. And if it's still going on, I'm sure there will still be things available if you're watching this after my Etsy restock goes live. I want to thank you all so much for always supporting me and my Etsy shop and my artwork and my videos. So anyway, thank you so much, and now let's talk about the books that I read in April. The first book I read was for my book club that I host on Fable, and if you'd like to join, it is free to join. I have so much fun there and chatting with everybody, reading with everybody, and so every month we read from a different genre, and then I pick 4 books from that genre, and you guys, all the members, get to choose which book we read. And so April was dedicated to poetry, and you guys voted for Rilke's The Book of Hours, and the subtitle is Love Poems to God. And this is translated by Anita Barrows and Joanna Macy with a new introduction by the translators. And I really enjoyed this collection of poems. I also loved the introduction by the translators. They were really informative and insightful, and they added a lot to the collection, and they added a lot to my understanding of where Rilke was coming from when he was writing these poems. Something I've really been enjoying doing lately is sharing my book reviews with you guys in my wrap-ups. I normally just share them on my Fable and my Goodreads, but it has been really fun to share them with you in my videos, so I'm going to share my review for The Book of Hours with you. This collection of poems was beautifully written and incredibly powerful. In the first section, The Book of Monastic Life, I loved Rilke's stunning use of imagery and metaphor. Many of them featured trees, branches, roots, a great leaf, wind, etc. As a nature lover, I adore when writers and poets use elements of the natural world to convey their emotions and ideas. In the second section, The Book of Pilgrimage, I couldn't help but transcribe countless quotes to reflect on for years to come. In the final section, The Book of Poverty and Death, I was moved by the way Rilke wrote about poverty and the difficult aspects of life in cities. I look forward to reading more of Rilke's stunning work. As you could tell, I really enjoyed this collection of poems, and like I said, I am really looking forward to reading more of Rilke's work. Besides this, and before I read this collection, the only thing I had read from him was Letters to a Young Poet, and that is still definitely my favorite of his, though I am really looking forward to seeing how I feel about some of his other works as well. The next book that I read, I listened to as an audiobook, and it is probably one of my favorite audiobooks I've ever listened to, and that is Tom Lake by Anne Patchett, which is narrated by Meryl Streep. I don't even have to say anything else, just the fact that it's Meryl Streep. Oh my gosh. Her narration was amazing, and like I did for The Book of Hours, I'm going to read you my review. Firstly, I have to say that I adored the audiobook. It was narrated by the exquisitely talented Meryl Streep. I usually feel quite immersed in the stories I read, but Meryl Streep made the book come to life in a way that felt entirely different. She didn't just read this beautiful book aloud, she truly performed it. The way she spoke the dialogue and the narrative made it feel as if I was listening to a movie without visuals, which is the magic of written storytelling. I truly can't praise the audiobook enough. It was sublime. Now onto the brilliant Anne Patchett. She has such an elegant way of writing. Her vivid descriptions and unique characters transported me into the story from the very first page. The plot gripped me, the setting enchanted me, and the characters soon felt like friends. This book is touching, witty, heartfelt, and tender. By the end of Tom Lake, I felt deeply connected to the story and was sad to bid it farewell. This book was quite the pleasant surprise. The only other Ann Patchett book I have read is Dutch House, which I also listened to the audiobook because the audiobook of Dutch House is narrated by Tom Hanks, who I also love as an actor and a narrator and a performer in general. So I really enjoyed Dutch House, but it wasn't anything that I completely fell in love with, so I didn't know how I would feel about Tom Lake. And I loved the story. Not only was the narration beautiful, like I said, but the story itself is so interesting and immersive. So the narrator of the story is the mother of this family, and she is telling her 3 daughters about the time in her life where she became an actor. She became an actor in her late teens and early 20s, and she performed on the stage. She mainly performed as Emily in the play Our Town, and she ended up dating this very famous actor. He wasn't very famous when they were dating, but he went on to become a very famous actor, and when her daughters found out that they dated, they freaked out and they needed to hear the whole story. Their father isn't this famous actor, and so it's really about how the mother felt about acting, what happened to her, and her relationship with that actor, and how she came to eventually date and marry their father, and how that all kind of influences how the girls feel and how they view their mother. And it's such a beautiful exploration of family, sisterhood, mother-daughter relationships. And it's set on a cherry orchard during COVID, actually, where it kind of influences the characters in a way where they're sort of forced to be together because of the lockdowns and everything. COVID wasn't a main part of the story, which I really appreciated. Not that it would have been a bad thing, but I think it would have given the story a different tone and it would have made it a different type of story. But I really loved the setting of the cherry orchard, and I felt like it was such a perfect beginning of spring read, and I just really enjoyed it. Loved the setting, loved the characters, loved the discussions, and loved the narration. So cannot recommend this book enough. I think it's really, really wonderful. The next book I listened to was another absolutely fantastic audiobook, and that was Everything is Tuberculosis by John Green, with the subtitle The History and Persistence of Our Deadliest Infection. So this is a nonfiction book all about the history and persistence of tuberculosis, and I found it so incredibly fascinating. John Green narrates the audiobook himself, which I just love the way that he narrates his books. He wrote it in a way that was extremely comprehensive for the everyday individual, and I think that that was really his intention, because you can tell how passionate he is about the subject of tuberculosis and how he really wants to raise awareness, and not only how it has affected people in history, but how it is still affecting people today. Of course, this book was not only incredibly fascinating, it was also very heartbreaking and difficult to read at times because it touches on quite heavy and difficult topics, but I also found it incredibly eye-opening, and it's just such an important read. I'm so glad that John Green wrote it and has brought it more to the forefront and has made it more accessible for everyday people to understand tuberculosis as a whole, and I'm just so glad that I had the honor of reading it, and I highly, highly recommend it. The next and last book that I read in April was Family and Bourgeoisie by Natalya Ginsburg. This is translated by Beryl Stockman, and these are 2 novellas, Family and Bourgeoisie, and they both touch on themes of family, relationships, love, loneliness, and the complexities of being a human. And her writing I found very captivating, and it had such a nice flow to it. And I'm really excited to read more of her longer works. So Natalya Ginsburg is a fantastic Italian writer, and she has written a lot of short stories, but she also has written a longer book that I have on my shelves. It's called All Our Yesterdays, right? I believe. I'm really excited now that I have read 2 of her novellas to read a longer work of hers and to see how I feel about that. I almost wished that I was able to grip onto this story a little bit more, which is something that I often feel with short stories. I really enjoyed what she was discussing, the themes that she was touching upon, and the characters. They were very complex and they were very interesting to follow and read about, but I kind of wish that I had just like a little bit more. That's not really a critique on the writing or the story as a whole. I just think that's part of storytelling, short storytelling, but I also think that there are short stories that maybe don't give you that feeling. So I'm not sure. Short stories, for me, I love writing short stories. I do love reading short stories, but it's difficult for me to sometimes pinpoint exactly how I feel about them or review them, which is why I'm rambling a little bit right now. Out of these two novellas in particular, I think I enjoyed Barkazia a little bit more. I found it a little bit more immersive, and the characters just really intrigued me, and I wanted to see what happened. And I'm excited to read more of Natalya Ginsburg and to see how I continue to feel about her as a storyteller, but I am so glad that I read this, and I'm really excited to continue my Italian literature journey because it has been so wonderful so far. If you guys have missed it, I have been obsessing over the My Brilliant Friend series by Elena Ferrante, and now that I am back in New York, so I read those in the UK when I was in Bristol, and now that I'm back in New York, I have started the show on Hulu, and oh my gosh, it's unbelievable. The actors are fantastic. It's exactly how I imagined it would be. The setting I imagined a little bit differently, like the scenery and where it's set, the neighborhood itself, but the characters are exactly how I pictured them, and I think that that's so thrilling. Anyway, so that really started my Italian lit journey, and then I heard about Natalya Ginsburg, and that's why I wanted to read some of her work, and I'm really glad that I did, and I can't wait to read more of other Italian literature and other Italian writers. So those are all of the books that I read in April, just 4, which is still a good amount. I'm honestly surprised that I read that many books because I was in England, we were very busy, and then my parents visited us, and I didn't really read very much when they were over visiting us in England, so I'm glad that I read as much as I did, even though it was a very busy month. So now let's talk about the books that I am in the middle of. The first book that I am currently in the middle of, I am truly loving so much, and that is East of Eden by John Steinbeck. I am on chapter 21, I believe. Also, I am using my John Steinbeck author portrait, which I illustrated, and this will be available in my Etsy shop today. So if you guys want to get your hands on a John Steinbeck portrait, now is the time. It is double-sided. He is on the page of East of Eden, which is perfect for my reading of East of Eden. So I have been loving using my John Steinbeck bookmark. Oh my gosh, this story, I feel like I have so much to say about it, but I don't even know how to articulate how I'm feeling. It's so just mind-boggling, and his writing is beautiful and descriptive, but also very sparse at the same time. But it's not sparse. It's, I think, just so intentional. I feel like every word he has put on the page with so much intention, and all of the descriptions are absolutely captivating and vivid and beautiful, and they just come to life on the page. And I do think that this is such a perfect time of year to read this book because it's very descriptive. The scenery really just feels like it's coming to life, and the characters, they're so complex, and I really love deep, emotionally complex characters, and this book has some of the most deeply complex characters that I've ever read from, to the point where I don't really even know how I feel about them because they're so complex and multifaceted, and they just feel so incredibly real, and I am loving this book so much. I can't wait to keep reading it. Oh, and I'm so glad that we're reading it for the book club because I've loved hearing what everybody else has been thinking about it as well. So if you want to join us, our book club is also on Fable. It is obviously called Game of Tomes. I think I already said that. And you can join for free, and you can read with Emma and I as we read East of Eden and some other big tomes. Oh my gosh, okay. This is a very bittersweet moment for me because starting in May, which today is May 1st when I'm filming this, May 1st and the month of May, we are going to be reading Mansfield Park by Jane Austen for the Well-Read Book Club. So this is my last unread Jane Austen novel. And once I finish this book, I will have read all of her novels, and Jane Austen is one of my all-time favorite writers. I adore her so much. I love learning about her as a person and an author, and I love her stories. I think she is one of the most brilliant writers, and I just wish I could go back in time and be her best friend, but I do feel like we can be friends when I read her work and when I learn about her. And I'm a little nervous to read Mansfield Park. Why I've saved it till the end, and maybe I shouldn't have, is it's a lot of people's least favorite Jane Austen novels. I have heard from a few people that they really love Mansfield Park, and I am going to be very open-minded with my reading of this book, but I weirdly don't have super high hopes, and I'm thinking that that's maybe a good thing, because then there's more room for me to be pleasantly surprised rather than disappointed. Does that make sense? Although I don't think Jane Austen is capable of disappointing me. I'm just going to go in with no expectations, I think, and just enjoy every moment of it, because this will only happen once, you know? I will only be able to read my last unread Jane Austen novel once, and I want to enjoy every moment of it. I don't know too much about the story of Mansfield Park. I do know that we are following a main character, Fanny Price, as she, I believe, moves to and starts living at Mansfield Park, which is this estate that I believe some of her relatives own. And it's about her coming of age. I'm just excited to see what Jane Austen has in store for me. So anyway, I would love it if you would join me for the Well Read Book Club to read my last Jane Austen novel. If you have the time, if you haven't read it, if you want to read it, if it works out well for your schedule, I would love to read my last Jane Austen novel with as many other lovely readers as I can, because I just feel like I'm going to need other emotional support. But anyway, I am so excited to read this, and I will be starting it today, which is incredibly thrilling and, like I said, bittersweet. Also, this edition is the beautiful Vintage Classics. I picked this up at the Jane Austen Center in Bath, and this is the one that I will be reading from. I also have the the little card that I wrote. So in the Jane Austen Center, when you do the tour, they have a little station where you can practice writing with a quill, and I wrote on this piece of paper, "Our first visit to Bath, Carolyn and Leon, October 19th, 2024. So I will be maybe using this as my bookmark, which I think will be special. Although I will be having a Jane Austen portrait available in my Etsy shop as well. So I could also always use my Jane Austen bookmark too. Anyway, then the other book that I am currently in the middle of is The Garden Against Time by Olivia Laing, and the subtitle is In Search of a Common Paradise. If you saw my last video, which is my whole book haul, bookish and non-bookish haul, my stationery haul, I showed you a lot of things in my last video of everything I picked up in my travels to England. I showed this book in that video because I picked it up at the smaller Daunt Books in Notting Hill. Daunt Books has a bigger location in Marylebone, which is their iconic store, but I didn't realize that they have a smaller store in Notting Hill, and so we went in there, I saw this book, and I picked it up because it sounds absolutely perfect, and it sounds like such a me book. It is a nonfiction book about Olivia Laing restoring a garden in Suffolk. It says, in 2020, Olivia Laing began to restore a walled garden in Suffolk, an overgrown Eden of unusual plants. The work drew them into an exhilarating investigation of paradise and its long association with gardens. Moving between real and imagined gardens, from Milton's Paradise Lost to Derek Jarman's Dungeness, from a wartime sanctuary in Italy to an aristocratic pleasure ground funded by slavery, Laing interrogates the sometimes shocking cost of making paradise on earth, and finds utopian outposts amid the flower beds. The Garden Against Time illuminates the pleasures and possibilities of gardens, not as a place to hide from the world, but as a site of fertile encounter and discovery. And as someone who loves flowers, nature, the great outdoors, and gardening, this is such a me book. And Right now, I am going in between reading it physically and listening to the audiobook because Olivia Lang narrates it herself, and I love reading nonfiction books that are narrated by the authors, which is why I loved reading the John Green book narrated by John Green. But right now, she is highlighting so many different aspects, not only of gardening, but of literature, and she is kind of merging literature and gardening and the history of gardening. It's so fascinating. She was referencing, like it says on the back, Milton's Paradise Lost. She also referenced The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. I love that she's making so many literary references, and she is just kind of combining all of my loves into one book, and I'm really, really enjoying this one, so I can't wait to keep reading it and listening to it and reading it physically. The last book that I'm reading is kind of a funny one because I started it on the last day of April. I started it yesterday on April 30th, and that is The Enchanted April by Elizabeth von Arnim. So I wanted to read this book in April, and I didn't have the time, and I really want to still read it, but I thought I need to read it. I need to read it in April, even if it's just for one day. So I started it yesterday on April 30th, and I read the first 2 chapters, and I'm really, really enjoying it. This is the beautiful Pan Macmillan Collector's Library edition, which you guys know I absolutely love. It's so funny, I haven't read from one of these in a while, and yesterday when I was reading this, I just got so excited, and it reminded me of when I first read Anna Karenina, because I read Anna Karenina in this edition, which I have right here. So special. So this is my copy of Anna Karenina that I first read the book from. I just was reminded yesterday while reading this of how much I love these editions. Anyway, enough about the edition. What is this story about? Well, on the back it says, "All the radiance of April in Italy lay gathered together at her feet," which I just love that quote so much. Also, the back is so beautiful as well. So this is a story about these English women who are tired of the dreary, cold, rainy winter in England, and I believe they are going, at the point in the story they haven't left for Italy yet, but I do believe that they end up having a holiday in April in a medieval castle in Italy. And I love how this book opens, so I thought I would read it out for you guys. Chapter 1. It began in a women's club in London on a February afternoon. An uncomfortable club and a miserable afternoon, when Mrs. Wilkins, who had come down from Hampstead to shop and had lunched at her club, took up the Times from the table in the smoking room, and running her listless eye down the agony column saw this: "To those who appreciate wisteria and sunshine, small medieval Italian castle on the shores of the Mediterranean, to be let furnished for the month of April. Necessary servants remain. Z. Box 1000, The Times." That was its conception. Yet, as in the case of many another, the conceiver was unaware of it at the moment. I think that's such a fantastic opening. I also love the fact that it says, "To those who appreciate wisteria and sunshine." One of my favorite flowers absolutely ever is wisteria, and when we were visiting Bath with my parents, 2 weeks ago now? Has it been 2 weeks? Oh my gosh. We were walking through the Crescent, and this one house had the most incredible wisteria I have ever seen in my entire life. And then we also, like I said, we went to Notting Hill, and another house in Notting Hill had the most incredible wisteria I have ever seen in my entire life. My whole life, this is so me, but I have been begging my parents for us to put wisteria somewhere in our garden. And my parents are huge gardeners, and they always said that wisteria is it's a very aggressive vine. It kind of attaches onto a lot of stuff, and sometimes it can take a lot to maintain, is what my parents say. Look, I think it's worth the maintenance because it's so beautiful. I don't care how much maintenance it takes. I just want the beautiful flowers. But anyway, I think my parents are kind of becoming more and more convinced that they should plant wisteria in their yard because it's so beautiful, and they saw the beautiful wisteria in England. But anyway, I loved that that's how the book opened. I'm really enjoying this. I don't know how much time I will have to dedicate in May to this book because I will be dedicating most of my time to Mansfield Park in East of Eden, but I would really love to keep reading this book and hopefully finish it in May, but we shall see. So, those are all of the books that I have read. Not Anna Karenina. Let me get this one out of here. Alright, here are some of the books that I read in April and the ones that I'm currently reading and will be reading in May. I would love to know if you've read any of these, what you think of them, and if you're interested in reading them, what are you reading in May? I would love to know what did you read in April and all of your other bookish updates because I love hearing from you. So thank you so much for watching this video, and don't forget my Etsy restock is happening today at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Is it Standard Time? Because the clock's changed? I always get confused with that. Anyway, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. And I just want to say again, thank you so much for all of your support, all of your kindness, and I am sending so much love to you. And I will see you very soon in another video. And as always, happy reading.